Hi again folks, how are you all doing? This is an old Wrenn 8F in War Department grey livery that was sent to me by a chap called Scott. He told me that this stopped working one day and he tried to service it, but a wire came loose and he didn't have much luck with it, so he's decided to send it to me. So it's a non-runner at the moment, and I've disengaged the drive gear because the motor casing is loose, and if I tried to push this it would grind the gears together and I don't want it to do that. So we'll shove it into the shed and we'll see what's up. Right then, an old Wrenn 8F. I've looked at a couple of these before. I disengaged the drive gear on this because the gears were grinding and the motor block seemed a bit loose. So I didn't want to do any damage to it by, when I pushed it back into the shed, I thought I'll just disengage the drive gear. So we'll take this apart and see what's what. We'll get the sponge. I think this is actually quite a valuable model. I don't think these are too common. Wrenn 8Fs aren't that hard to come by, but one in this livery I think is a wee bit of a rarity. So I shall be extra careful with it. Let's get that off. That disengages the tender. We'll get that out the way. We'll get the front bogie off. So if I remember rightly, this has a screw down the lum. There it is. And there'll be the two little screws at the back. Do that screw and then the body will come off. Like so. So yeah, that wire's become detached. We'll solder that back on. I'm just going to tighten this drive gear back up. Because the first thing I want to look at is how this is meshing. See, that's okay at that. Tighten that right up. See? Yeah, there's something up with this. Right, otherwise, these all look absolutely fine. Nice and clean. Feels free moving, so there's no problem there. Nothing a wee bit of oil won't sort. But we'll need to give this a wee service. Nothing there. Yeah, not getting anything out of this motor at all. Work it up to full power. It's humming. That off, that brush come out. Yeah, the brushes are in a bit of a state. That one's okay, but that one's in a mess. Is the ball bearing in there? Yes, it is. Take that out, and then the magnet and the armature will come out. Oh, we've got a big problem. That's bent. You can see that's bending up the way. That's why the gear was slipping. That's not good. So I'll have a go at straightening that, but I don't fancy my chances much. Even if I get it reasonably straight, if it's not perfectly straight, this will vibrate and cause noise. If I try straightening this with the parallel pliers, it's going to damage the thread on the gear. Doubt very much I can do this by hand. Put a bit of rubber insulation on that and try. Straightened it a little bit, but not much. There is something not right with this. I'm not convinced that's the right armature. It's like the armature's too long. Okay, so this is actually the next day, in fact the next afternoon. I spent a long time yesterday afternoon messing around with this, trying to get the motor to run properly. I straightened out the armature, put it all back together, and it seemed to run okay until I installed it back into the chassis, and then it just locked up again. And I kind of gave up with it. Beer o'clock came and went, and I just thought, oh, do you know what, I'll come back to this tomorrow. There's clearly something going on, but I just couldn't see what. Then I had a wee look at it this morning, and it suddenly dawned on me what was going on with this. But I didn't film. I did film me messing around with this all yesterday afternoon, but I'm not going to bother showing you any of that. It's kind of pointless. But unfortunately, I didn't film, or I wasn't filming when I actually figured out what was wrong with this. But I'll explain it. So if you're sitting comfortably, I'll tell you the story of this motor. There's two issues with it. The main issue is, or was, this screw. This is the screw that holds this into the chassis. Goes through there. And when I screwed it in tight, the armature just locked up. And then this morning, I took it apart again, and I noticed that the armature had bent again. And that's when the penny kind of dropped as to what was going on here. That screw is not the right screw. It's too long, and it's going through the chassis and into its little hole there. And when you screw it in, it's going up and pushing against the armature shaft. So it's bending the armature shaft as you screw it in. So that's not the correct screw. I've got another screw that will fit to solve that problem. But this had another problem in that the entire armature was too far this way. And there was two ball bearings in this bearing here. There's one in that bearing, but there was two ball bearings in there. So I thought, well, I'll take one of the ball bearings out, and that'll bring the armature back a bit. But it brought it too far back. And I could get the motor, I could get it to run in forwards direction, but not in backwards direction. That's because in the forwards direction, the armature is pulled that way, and in backwards direction, it's pulled that way. So when it's getting pulled that way, the thread of the worm was getting pushed against the bearing. So I thought, well, I need to put the second ball bearing back in there, but how do I get around the problem of the armature being too far this way? Because it was the actual anvils, the actual armature was hitting the casing. So I ground the end of the armature shaft down a little bit. There's a spindle at the end. I sort of ground it down by about half, and that's brought the armature back into line. And I think that has solved the problem. So I've solved the problem of the armature being too far that way, and also the overly long screw that was hitting the armature. So yeah, I was really annoyed with myself for not spotting the problem with this screw yesterday, because it was so obvious. But I've not encountered that problem before. But I just couldn't see it. But I saw it straight away this morning. I thought, oh, I know what's going on. But anyway, I think we've got it sorted. So we'll get it put back together. So we pop that on there. And we use this screw to hold it in place, which is considerably shorter. So screw that in, that holds that in place, and is that engaged? Yes, it is. And the armature is moving back and forwards a little bit, so that all looks good. So we need to solder this back onto there. Okay. Right, so in theory, this should run. But these old models can be very temperamental, and we might have to do a bit of fiddling with this bearing yet. So let's see how it goes, or if it goes. Okay, power on. and away it goes. It's pulling about 250 milliamps, which was really good for an old Wrenn model. Yeah, that's running not bad at all. Quite pleased with that. It might need a wee bit of adjusting, but we'll see. These can be very temperamental, these old things. So yeah, we'll see. So we'll give it a wee spot of oil here and there. Just get some into the axles because it's a bit dry looking. A few wee spots and linkages. We'll get the body on. Like that. Put that in there. Just give that a couple of turns just to engage it. Don't want to tighten it up yet. We'll get these wee screws in place. Now they're in, we'll tighten this up. That. The front bogie on. The wheels all look nice and clean. Oh, the front bogie isn't clean. Yeah, this needs a good clean. Oh, that coupling's in a state. I also think there's a problem with one of the tender wheels. I think one's got a loose tyre. So we'll have a look at that in a minute. Right, it's a bit better. What's that? Let's have a look at this tender. Yeah, we've got a loose tyre. The wheels are really dirty. Don't know if that'll just push on or if we're going to have to get a wee spot of glue in it, I think. Glue, just go round. There we go, that should set okay. There we are. Right, final test. Very nice. So there we go, it seems to be running okay. We'll see how it goes in the layout, but I think it'll be all right. Yeah, I apologise for not actually showing the actual repair on this, because I kind of did that this morning off camera when I figured out what was wrong. And you know, I wasn't filming at the time, and I just thought, oh, I see what's going on, and I just sort of quickly tested it, you know, quickly repaired it, and yeah, it runs. I thought, oh, I've not filmed me actually doing the repair, but never mind. It's just the way it works out sometimes. But yeah, pleased to get this running again because it's a nice old model and it deserves to be running. Right, I've fiddled around with this long enough. Let's bring it out of the shed. And we're back in the room. One thing I didn't check on this was wheel spacing. And there's a problem with this going around corners, even on second, even third radius curves, it just kind of stutters and stops. And you know, the 280 wheel configuration, these wheels don't have flanges, but these ones do, but you know, they're quite far apart. And unless your wheel spacing is spot on, this will give you problems on the curves. And even when they are spot on, this can slow down a bit on curves, but I think the wheel spacing is way out on this. And I should have checked it before I ran it, but there you go. My head was full of other things. Right, let's see what we got. 14.2, that's okay. 14.7. So that's the culprit. Yeah, and it would be this one. This one's fairly easy to fix, but this one's tricky because we've got the valve gear, so we might have to take this apart, lift the valve gear out the way to get at these wheels to give them a squeeze, to get that down to about 14.1 is where I would want it to be. We'll maybe give these ones a wee squeeze as well. Number of times that happens, you know, I work on a locomotive, and it seems fine on the test track, and you get it onto the layout. And then all sorts of other problems become apparent. And it's one of the reasons I don't use a rolling road. I'm going to come to rolling roads at some point. I'm going to do a video on rolling roads. I'm going to get one, and I'm going to do a video on why I don't use them, but why I might use them now and again. But I don't trust them because, you know, just because the wheels are going round and round, it really doesn't mean anything. Locomotives have to negotiate curves, points, slight undulations in the track and all sorts. So, yeah. Until it's done a couple of laps of the layout, I'm not convinced that a locomotive is fixed. So, if we undo this, the valve gear should lift out the road. I really don't want to dismantle the rods and everything. You don't want to do that on these old Wrenns and Dublos unless you really have to. But by lifting that out the way, we can get at this a bit. Now, I could pull the crank pins, but I don't think I'll have to. I think I can get this into the vise just enough. Get that in there. Right, we'll give it a go. So I would much prefer to get the wheels out, but let's see what we can do. So if I can get that into there, and that into there. I just want to get the vise onto the centres of the wheels, like that. There we go. And then give that a wee bit of a squeeze. And what we got to be careful not to overdo it. 14.3. There's not much play on those wheels, to be honest, which is another problem. Right, okay, put that back down, make sure it's all set right, and we'll give that a wee test. As I say, I'd like them down to 14.1, but I don't think there'd be any movement if I did that. Right, okay, we'll go and give this a wee test. Okay, so when I ran this before, it stopped on that corner before it got to the point. So let's see what it does this time. It's better. That's more like it. Right, now I think we're sorted. Right, we'll pull it out the shed again. So there we go, that's this Wrenn 8F sorted. The main issues were that incorrect screw hitting the armature being a bad fit, a broken wire and incorrect wheel spacing. The armature being a bad fit is actually something I've seen before, and I'm not entirely sure how it comes about. Maybe the armature has been swapped out, or maybe over time it wears and a second ball bearing is added to try to reposition it. Something happened because no way was that motor going to run the way it was, but I sorted it by adjusting the length of the armature by grinding off about 1mm from the spindle on the worm, fitted a replacement screw, resoldered the wire and adjusted the back-to-back on the drive wheels. Just like the other 8S I've worked on, this locomotive tends to slow a little on the curves, and like a lot of these old models with this particular motor, it lacks a bit of torque at slow speeds. It runs best at a good speed, but it will speed up as it warms up. You know, you have to drive these models, which is kind of part of their charm, I think, and a good quality controller is a must. A nice condition model though, and looks really good in that livery. Scott got this at a very low price, so I'm sure he'll be happy to have it back in running order. Okay, I shall get it packed up and sent back to him. Catch you later, folks.